You're listening to China Africa Talk.
Jambo, ni Bridget akikuletea kipindi kinachohusiana na China na Afrika.
Vous écoutez le dialogue sino-africain avec Bridget.
Everything China, everything Africa.
Olá, você está ouvindo China Africa Talk com Bridget.
سيداتي وسادتي مرحبا بكم في الحوار الصيني العربي مع بريدجيت.
Greetings and welcome back to the program. You're listening to China Africa Talk. I'm your host, Bridget Mutambirwa, and I bring you discussions on what's happening with China and Africa from a Chinese and African perspective. The 17th BRICS Summit takes place in Rio de Janeiro on July 6th and 7th. As the rotating chair of the bloc, Brazil hosts the summit under the banner of Strengthening Global South Cooperation for More Inclusive and Sustainable Governance. In recent years, BRICS has evolved into a major force in promoting cooperation among Global South nations. This partnership not only drives economic and social progress, but also offers alternative pathways for global governance and presents new models for modernization. Looking ahead, how can BRICS continue to serve as an effective platform for amplifying the collective voice of the Global South, and what more can the bloc do to deliver practical outcomes that benefit developing nations? To go further into our discussion, I'm now joined by Emmanuel Matambo, Research Director of the Center for China-Africa Studies at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa, and Liu Baocheng, Director of the Center for International Business Ethics at the University of International Business and Economics. Professor Liu Baocheng and Dr. Matambo, thank you for joining us today on China Africa Talk.
It's always a pleasure.
We'll start with you, Professor Liu. Could you shed light on the internal dynamics of the expanded BRICS, and how can the group's growing diversity shape the future of global economic governance, geopolitical stability, and South-to-South cooperation?
I think there is an incidental issue where the acronyms of the BRICS, they come together, and then they come together in a very natural way because they represent the world's largest emerging economies. And now, since the Johannesburg Summit in 2023, BRICS has expanded to include new members, which includes Saudi Arabia, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the UAE. So this member is there to have a shared view to promote economic growth and also for digital and green transformation. And together, they also are looking out for the reform of the world financial architecture because the new development bank, we normally call it BRICS banks, they launched with $50 billion in capital, and now with more of the members are there to beef up the capitalization. It is there to offer an alternative to the Bretton Woods institutions. So last year, the new development bank has lent over 22% of its portfolio in local currencies. So therefore, they are looking more for their financial sovereignty. And this is particularly crucial given a turbulent world and also the SWIFT system and the US dollar being more and more politicized and manipulated by geopolitical considerations. And then this also helps to reach a diversity in which China is the world manufacturing hub and going for high quality growth with more of the technological capacity can be generously shared, and the oil countries can supply the energy, and many other members are participating really to strengthen the bargaining power and also collaborative force among the global South countries. So with more of the diversity and also wrapped in the compatibility of the comparative advantages, people are really looking at more of the prospects when this new platform is there to get more consolidated and also working in the same direction so that they will provide a sense of stabilization to the global economy and also global geopolitics.
Let's move on to the African countries that are in the BRICS there, Dr. Matambo. With the recent inclusion of Egypt and Ethiopia, alongside South Africa. How can the three African BRICS members strengthen coordination within the bloc, and what unique contributions can Africa as a collective voice bring to BRICS moving forward?
When it comes to the expansion of the BRICS as a group that purports to represent the interests of the global south or the developing world, as I prefer to call it, it was ineluctable that a considerable membership should come from the African continent, because we do not only represent the highest number of developing countries, we also represent the biggest growing populations at the moment. Whilst India and China still have the force of numbers, Africa has the biggest growing population at the moment. So it is unavoidable that Africa should be front and center of issues and organizations that claim to speak on the interests of the developing world. When it comes to Ethiopia and Egypt's inclusion in the BRICS in 2023, I think it was quite astute on the part of existing BRICS members of that time, because these are the two countries that are some of the biggest populations on the African continent. Nigeria has the biggest population, followed by Ethiopia, then Egypt. So already there you see that they bring with themselves the strength of numbers on the African continent. Secondly, geographically speaking, they are also members that bring some clout on African affairs. Ethiopia in the Horn of Africa and the East African region, Egypt in North Africa. So you can already tell that there's a certain geographic representativity that was a deliberate calculation on the part of the BRICS. I thought that was important to highlight. In the specific respect of Ethiopia, it is a seat where the African Union headquarters is situated. Julius Nyerere once called Addis Ababa the capital city of Africa. If you are talking about an issue that has to talk about African issues, it is inevitable that you have to bring Ethiopia into the fold. So what these African members of the BRICS bring to the organization, first of all, is geographic representativity of exactly what is the developing world. Secondly, what they bring is a force of numbers. Africa is one of the biggest markets for any manufacturing hub. Thirdly, Africa also brings a considerable number of voting percentages at the United Nations. So these are the factors that Africa brings. Fourthly, and is the fact that we're now entering into the world of sustainable development. We're now greening development in the world. Africa holds a significant number of minerals that will become critical in the transformation of energy production in the world. So these are just some of the strengths for now. There are many more that I can state, but just to abridge my response for now, these are the strengths that Africa brings to the BRICS countries.
Okay, Professor Leo, Dr. Matambo just highlighted some of these factors. But still on the issue of compatibility, BRICS countries vary in political systems, economic models, and regional priorities. In your view, what makes these countries compatible, and where do their strategic interests converge, particularly in championing the global south?
Well, historically, these countries were set apart either by geographical boundaries or by different type of system and different type of growth model. But now, in a more connected world, they come together for a very strong reason, because all of these countries are in a rapid urbanization and industrialization process. Now they face the challenge of the global north, and now they have a strong urge to group together to find alternative solutions so that their autonomy can be defended. But in the meanwhile, they also have a collective bargaining power in the global platform, such as the IMF and World Bank, etc. And then they also are there to find their own solutions with more of financial vehicles, with their understanding of the solutions to the climate change issues. And particularly people in Africa are also looking for practical solutions to deal with the poverty issue, to deal with the capacity building. And the Gulf countries are also looking out for new markets and technologies to boost their industrial upgrading by diversifying their portfolio instead of simply relying on the oil exports. So it is really the common interest and the common pursuit that brings them together and also by meeting together, however digital world we are facing, by people meeting together, discussing each other, debating with each other, or even quarreling with each other, you build the level of trust and you build the understanding of why someone thinks differently, so that you're able to have the opportunity to build a consensus over something that can really have shared interest. So I think the key is, to have the people getting connected and finding solutions, and then they are able to move forward, so that they will not really be able to lag behind of technological advancement, and also in the division of the global financial and economic fruition. So that's the way to go. But right now also they face much more of the turbulent world, and they feel a sense of instability simply relying on the Bretton Woods agreements. So therefore they build particularly their financial vehicles to boost their infrastructure, to build more of the facilities for renewable energy in the global south countries, and now with more of contingent reserve arrangements, particularly contributed by China through the Belt and Road program. This gave people more of the confidence, so that they are able to find more of their synergy and complementarity. So I think this is really the right type of approach. But in the meanwhile, we do identify some of the challenges that we need to address, because for example, some of the new members have not really contributed their fair share within the new development bank, and also they need to go for more of institutionalized organization, to build a secretariat and to have more of the global agenda, closely following the timeline, etc. But I think this is really already quite a breakthrough. So there's a good reason to reckon that they're going to be more structured and they're going to be more impactful.
Okay. Dr. Matambo, I'd like to hear, perhaps in addition to what Professor Liu has said there on, where the strategic interests of these countries converge. In the case of Africa, we've now got these new members, Ethiopia and Egypt as well there. Where do their strategic interests converge, particularly in championing the global south? Maybe from the African side, what could be the case?
When it comes to the interests of Africa, there are a lot of convergences, and these are found in the document called Agenda 2063 by the African Union. Now, I can highlight some of those, obviously. There have been an acknowledgement in terms of aspects of Africa's circumstances that have limited the continent's growth and development, infrastructure being one of those. Conflict being another formidable obstacle to Africa's development. So some of those things there have not been achieved, but these are the goals, the aspirations in long term in terms of the African continent. Thirdly, obviously, I can speak about the importance of beneficiation, because today, even if Africa has found an alternative source, so to say, for its trade inputs and stuff like that, we have seen that there is still a replication of the same imbalanced trade that existed between Africa, largely with the United States, and largely as well with former colonial powers on the African continent. So the issue of value addition is really gaining prominence when it comes to Africa's. We as Africans, obviously, who look up to countries such as South Africa, Ethiopia, Egypt, and Nigeria should be added to that as well, as the countries that would champion the interests of the African continent. And this, by the way, will be to the benefit of other BRICS countries. China and India are massive African trade partners, but they also should have an interest in an Africa that is politically stable, predictable in terms of their own investments. So they should help to harness the great potential that Africa has. So yes, there are a lot of things on which African countries try to converge, but the responsibility as well to make sure that those aspirations are brought into fruition primarily lies with the African Union.
How has South Africa's engagement within the BRICS evolved over time, and what role is South Africa likely to play in coordinating African interests within the bloc and representing the continent's development needs?
When South Africa joined the BRICS, it had just changed its presidency, its national presidency, from Thabo Mbeki to Kgalema Motlanthe and then Jacob Zuma. The process itself started during the time of Thabo Mbeki, and that was the time when South Africa's stature as a champion of the African Renaissance was at its apogee, was at its most prominent. So it was a South Africa that was looking at the interests of Africa, trying to revive the role that the African continent played on its domestic affairs, because historically Africa's activities have been dictated from capitals that lie elsewhere, not on the African continent. So that was South Africa at the time when it was joining the BRICS. It was still trying to champion Pan-Africanism, African Renaissance, but at the same time as well, kind of feeling its way around this group of emerging countries. And it was also a time when the world was still recovering from the slump of the 2008 global recession. But now, with the passage of time, we have seen a more assertive South Africa. This is a South Africa that was not only championing the interests of Africa, but was also championing the interests of the membership of other African countries within the BRICS countries. Another layer to South Africa was South Africa championing the interests of the global South. I was very impressed on the 21st of November 2023 when President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa convened the BRICS extraordinary meeting to discuss Israel's war in Gaza. I thought that was important. That was not only BRICS statesmanship on the part of South Africa, it was also South Africa's statesmanship on global affairs. So this just shows the development and the evolution of South Africa's assertiveness, using the BRICS to champion not only the domestic interests of South Africa, not only the continental interests of South Africa, but the regional and global interests of the developing world as well.
Professor Leo, let's talk about the summit. What key issues is China expected to champion this time around, and how's China positioning itself to advance long-term cooperation within the BRICS framework?
Well, China has been very consistent and committed to promote the rising platform by having so many members welcomed to participate. The agenda for China is that they always stand by the interest of the global South countries. And in particularly, China will look at the sovereign autonomy in their own decision in terms of the political system, in terms of the growth model, in terms of the focus on industrial growth. And then China will also be able to propose some of the sub-platforms to address climate change issues, to address the public health issues by building more of the joint research. China is also doing an exemplary showcase to enhance the capacity building. Actually, I was in Peking University in the South-South Cooperation Institute. So we have been discussing how we can really first expand the enrollment of senior managers and senior government officials so that they are able to share the Chinese growth model and Chinese industrialization on both sides. And two is that how we can propose to the government to expand more of the scholarship for some of the younger talents for entrepreneurship, and then how we can really follow up with the alumni who graduated from Chinese institutions so that they are able to get further connected with China, doing e-commerce, they doing all type of trade promotion programs. So this is something that the people-centric idea is utterly important. The other is the financial issues, because right now most of the countries are being threatened by the SWIFT system, the unreliability. Now they really talk about, if not a common currency, but rather a sort of different type of payment settlement system to bypass the weaponization of the dollar and the SWIFT system. And then China is also there to propose to build more of the industrial parks so that the global supply chain can be further stretched to reduce the reliance on the global north, while they can really share the technologies. And so China has a lot of open source digital technologies that can be shared to boost the economic efficiency and also to facilitate the living style. China is also looking out to expand its export marketplace with the solar panels, with new energy batteries and new energy cars. So this really are something that we are looking at. Of course, and also China is always ready to offer some of the concessional loans and even free aid, but China will also, again, make sure that they are being properly used. I think one thing that's very practical is the Ruban workshop, which really gave people the practical skills to develop their own industry, to service the local community with the smaller investment, but with the right skill and also with the right connection with China and hopefully within the larger community of the BRICS Plus.
Still on you there, Professor Leo. With Brazil chairing BRICS in 2025 and hosting COP30 later this year, how might this multi-platform leadership help Brazil drive tangible outcomes and global policy alignment within the BRICS? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a very interesting question because within BRICS, Brazil plays a very unique role. Actually, last year they were hosting the G20, and now they're not only hosting the BRICS, they expanded the summit, and they also are hosting the COP30. It does really offer an unparalleled opportunity to synchronize the agenda across the global governance, and so they can use this converging type of power to bridge the developed versus the developing divide on issues like debt relief, climate finance, digital inclusion, and of course they also have their own regional considerations, so they may highlight the Amazon protection and energy transition to preserve the local environment while promote their energy supply in a more economically and also efficient and also the environmentally friendly way. They could really champion certain debt sustainability and the special drawing rights reform within the global organization, so that how they can really bring a sort of synergy between the new BRICS Bank versus the IMF versus the World Bank traditional, the playground. And Brazil is also a great agriculture country, so therefore they may also propose how we can really share the agri-tech and bioeconomy, so that probably we can really build a joint research platform to deal with the discovery of new seeds and to discover some of the biofuels and also some of the pesticide who is less hazardous to the nature. And then I think lastly, they may also bring up the digital governance into agenda, because the global south does need alignment on the digital sovereignty, and also we need to build a shared understanding on the artificial intelligence ethics, and also to build a platform of accountability. So this type of weaving different interests together so that we move in one direction and with strategic alignment. And that's something we expect Brazil to bring up a issue. President Lula also launched the Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. That can really be shared because right now with all the geopolitical confrontations and those people who are really deprived of the legitimate access to the right food, to the right living facilities, needs to be taken into consideration, and this voice needs not only to be shared within the BRICS platform, but to be shared on a global basis.
Yes. Dr. Matambo, which issues is South Africa expected to highlight at this year's summit, and how do these priorities align with both its domestic agenda and broader continental aspirations?
South Africa has had quite a tumultuous year. Since mid-year last year, for the first time, the African National Congress was forced into a coalition government. And its biggest partner is the Democratic Alliance, whose economic ideology does not align with that of the African National Congress, but I guess pragmatism and realism forced the two parties to come together. That obviously has ushered in an era of uncertainty, wherein ordinary people do not really know which economic direction South Africa is likely to pursue. Compounded by that uncertainty was what has been happening this year since the return of President Donald Trump to the Oval Office in the United States of America. We have seen South Africa was lambasted with a multitude of unjustifiable trade tariffs. So that is likely to be on the agenda of South Africa. How do you open up global supply chains? The second thing is likely to align with this year's theme for BRICS, which is strengthening global South cooperation for more inclusive and sustainable governance. That is a thing that aligns closely with South Africa's own issues of just energy transition and championing the interests of the global South as well. And there are these flagship priorities that Brazil has set aside for 2025, which align with South Africa. We're talking about global health cooperation. South Africa popularized the notion of vaccine apartheid during COVID-19, trying to lessen the stringent requirements for intellectual properties for the manufacturing of vaccines at the time when Africa was being ravaged by COVID-19. So it is going to continue championing that. I've already spoken about trade, which is another flagship priority that Brazil spoke about, investment and finance, and then the issue of climate change as well. Africa has been the least contributor to toxins that have undermined the issue of the climate, but we have been adversely impacted because of that. So how do the BRICS continue to champion the issue of climate change? Artificial intelligence, the issue of disinformation and misinformation. The BRICS offers South Africa to champion the promotion of global reform. We have spoken about this since the inception of the Ezulwini consensus that said, let us reform the United Nations Security Council. So I expect that South Africa continue to champion this.
Just to wind up our discussion with you there, Professor Leo, how can BRICS continue to serve as a meaningful platform for amplifying the collective voice of the global South? And what more can the bloc do to ensure practical outcomes that benefit developing countries?
BRICS does give a inspiration to the whole world to look at how global South can really get united and do something on their own instead of totally rely on the institutional structure set forth by the Bretton Woods agreements. And the confidence also is derived from the fact that BRICS countries represents far larger share of the global economy and also its trade. And then in this new era, BRICS members identify more of the complementarities among themselves than simply looking at their traditional partners in the global South.
Right.
And then thirdly, I could see that there are more of the practical technologies that can be shared. I do not think many African countries really need the cutting edge technology in the 3 nano chips, etc., how to make that. It's really how practically people can really get the skills to have a startup. People can really learn how to make the solar panels. So I think the key is infrastructure. Because, when the global nows are living in a postmodern world, modernization is still on the top agenda for all the BRICS countries and also the global South countries as well. So therefore, to have the capital that is there to channel for infrastructure building, it's not only the roads and ports, but also for information infrastructure, together with all the gadgets from USB to mobile phones, and then to Wi-Fi and to satellite connection. These are really the very practical issues that the emerging economies can already share. And then the financial facilities are there. It's not only the BRICS Bank that offers the loans over big infrastructure projects, but as President Xi has proposed, the small and beautiful projects are there to cater to the development of local community and really to generate immediate the betterment in the lifestyle of the people, and by building schools, by building workshops. And this is something that can be done. And then I think the BRICS are also expected to expand its membership. And with that, they have not only a higher level of capitalization, but they are also ways for them to discuss alternative financial governance within themselves. Then they also build a collective bargaining power with some of the traditional lenders. Then the digital commons are there to be also on the agenda. It's there to promote more of the cross-border digital public infrastructure. India is also doing the UPI, and Brazil is doing the PIX. China is also boosting its 5G and hopefully the 6G. And then the driverless traffic is also on the agenda of the leadership. So I think lastly is really to institutionalize the capacity building process so that, if the BRICS can really generate a university, a sort of academy, and build more of the branches to feed into the technical cooperation agencies and also other type of platform, that would be great because this way you do not really talk about all the time ideological differences, governance.
I like the idea that you brought through there, the university.
Yeah, so they can set up some of the sideline projects on climate change issues, on public health issues, on the green industrial park issues. And we can also consider to build, sister industrial parks. For example, South Africa built one, and then they correspond with a cousin of industrial parks in China so that they can jointly develop the technology and share. And in the meanwhile, they bargain for tariff-free imports and exports. So this way, we really work under one roof. So that's something that would be beautiful with all the trust and with all the friendship. So instead of simply, dealing with cool-headed debate and confrontation.
Putting some action to it, it ensures this continuity as well. And Dr. Matambo, your thoughts there, probably just to wind off?
What I can say about that matter is what I have been saying as well about the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. I think there has to be a very pedantic monitoring and evaluation component to the activities of the BRICS. How exactly is everything going to be tabulated when it comes to the achievements that the BRICS countries set themselves? How can countries of the BRICS, other countries apart from Brazil itself, help to make sure that there are certain timeframes for those flagships? What resources are the BRICS countries going to invest in those specific flagships? And I think that is what would offer the BRICS to be more practical than what has hitherto been the case.
Professor Liu Baocheng and Dr. Matambo, thank you for your insights on this discussion.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Bridget.
Listeners, you can subscribe to our online newsletter on CGTN or Substack to get more insights on China-Africa relations. Just search China-Africa Talk. For now, it's goodbye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post it on social media or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. See you next time.